Chances are good you've heard of perfectionism. Perhaps that's even you, where you struggle and strive to get everything absolutely perfect to the point where it stops you from being successful, getting stuff done, and finding happiness in life. Well, in this video, I'm going to unpack perfectionism and how it relates to self-sabotage. Ultimately, perfectionism is self-sabotage. So I'm going to look at what it is, where it comes from, and more importantly, how you can begin to tackle your own perfectionism in your life, in your work, and in your relationships. So let's look first at what perfectionism actually is. Well, it's a pursuit of a set of standards that are usually unrealistic, and unachievable. It's the pursuit of making everything absolutely perfect or as right as it can possibly be. The challenge with this is that, as I'm going to come on to later, it's unrealistic and it will self-sabotage you in a whole bunch of ways. So how does perfectionism affect us? Well, the first one, and it's probably the biggest, is procrastination. Putting things off or not finishing things properly because they're just not right, or waiting for the ideal scenario, a situation or circumstances to get started or to get things finished. And yeah, that's probably one of the biggest. The next one is burnout. If you're constantly striving for an unrealistic goal, then you run the risk of just driving yourself into the ground. Never a good thing. Another one is fear of failure and fear of being judged. Fear is a big driver oftentimes with perfectionism because you're worrying about what other people, well, a lot of people worry about what other people might think if it's not absolutely perfect. Another one is never feeling good enough, even to the point where you dismiss your own success because it may not necessarily have been exactly the way you had wanted it or envisaged it. And finally, another biggie is overthinking and being over-prepared and missing opportunities as a result. This is surprisingly common. You're just waiting for things to be perfect. You don't make a decision because it isn't as the way you think it should be, and then the opportunity is gone. I know I've been guilty of that a few times. So how does perfectionism come about? What are some of the common root causes of perfectionism? Well, for many, it's a childhood scenario where you may or may not have felt that you're not good enough. You've got others had high or unrealistic expectations for you, teachers, parents, influential people in your life, and you feel that you've got to constantly, in your adult life, meet these standards that were set years, decades ago. Another one, and this is a really biggie, is societal pressure to succeed or to be absolutely perfect or to be the best. We all tend to suffer from the influences of society and those around us, and sadly we have a success-driven society that is often unrealistic and can really damage your ability to feel like you're good enough and getting good enough work done. Something else that tends to crop up is the fear of judgment or the fear of failure. Fear of judgment is a big deal because so many people are worried about how they look in the eyes of others, and again, it's unrealistic. It's purely false. You only need to be as good as you can be, not what other people think. And also low self-esteem and the feel that you need to prove your worth. Oftentimes this comes back to childhood stuff, feeling that you're not good enough, being told that you need to do better. I was told that quite a few times at school. And so you strive to be absolutely perfect, and you're absolutely terrified of getting things wrong. So you try to make things as good as they can possibly be, as perfect as they can possibly be, and you're ultimately setting yourself up for failure because it will never be absolutely perfect. Now, one thing perfectionism is not is healthy striving. Now, healthy striving is where you look to get better, you look to improve, even if things don't go quite the way you want. There's nothing wrong with doing your best and making things as best as you can make them, but ultimately you've got to get to the point where you have to acknowledge that it's good enough. You strive to be good enough, the best you can possibly be under these circumstances, but don't let it drag you down. And the thing is, perfectionism is usually fear of failure at all costs. Thing is, at some point in your life, you will fail. So there are some things in life that just don't go your way. And being able to handle this is a big deal of growing up, really. It's the way life is, the way the world works. And one of the downsides of perfectionism is it stifles your creativity and also really, really makes your productivity hard work, a lot harder than it should be. Now I'm going to give you a few examples. I don't know about you, but I've spent goodness knows how much time trying to perfect an email that I wanted to send out. Well, that's the cattle. Literally disproportionate to how long it should have taken me. I've been very guilty of that and sometimes still am. I used to type out blog posts, and 1,000 words could take me anywhere between 2 and 3 hours because I was constantly re-editing, trying to make it absolutely perfect. And again, it's totally unrealistic. It's never going to happen, but I used to spend half a day just writing one blog post, and I didn't look forward to it. I know it needed to be done. It was important for my business and my marketing, but I didn't look forward to it. Nowadays, the tools are available and I've learned how to make that more efficient. But at the time, my God, that really frustrated me. I frustrated myself because I just could not get to the point where I felt that it was good enough. That was a biggie. Another example is a friend of mine I used to work with who had a small business, and he spent nearly a whole working day trying to perfect a logo for his business. Now, I know that your branding is important, but a whole working day working with a designer to make it absolutely perfect. I don't know how many times I told him throughout the day, look, good enough is good enough. It looks great. Just put it to one side, accept that it's good enough and move on. Life's too important to fret over a logo for a whole working day. Now, something else that comes up with perfectionism is projecting your perfectionism onto others, and I've been guilty of this, particularly in relationships. My ex really bore the brunt of my feeling that what she did wasn't good enough, it wasn't done the way I wanted it to, and that was my hang up, not hers, and sadly it made our relationship a lot more difficult than it should have been. And this is quite common. If you're a perfectionist, it's quite common that you will project onto others your feeling of having to get everything right. Another example is not celebrating success, and this is quite common amongst perfectionists because success is a relative thing, and if it doesn't look exactly the way you thought it should have done, even though you will have achieved a measure of success, you will struggle to feel good about it. And if you don't celebrate success, if you don't celebrate those milestones and making progress, ultimately you'll never feel successful. It's the old song, sing when you're winning. There's a big reason why sports people, when they score a goal or get a try, they celebrate, they jump up, they scream and shout. Why? Because they want to sing when they're winning. They want to celebrate their success, even if it's just a small part of that overall picture. And another big deal is putting things off until the circumstances or situations absolutely perfect. And a lot of people would love to be able to start a side hustle business, for example, but they don't because they're waiting for the circumstances to be just right. Sadly, that rarely happens. Life just gets in the way. So perfectionists will often wait until the right time or the right circumstances, and it's a fool's errand because it isn't going to happen. Perfectionism, quite frankly, the right time, the perfect circumstances just won't turn up. I've always said to people like that, just get started. You'll make mistakes, it's not going to be perfect, but just get started. So how can we begin to tackle this perfectionism? Well, the first one is to embrace imperfection. Acknowledge that nothing is ever going to be absolutely perfect. You're certainly not, I'm not, no one is. So why on earth are you waiting to try and get things perfect? So embrace imperfection. Acknowledge that you will make mistakes. It's all part of learning and growing. But also remember that you should celebrate the small wins. And oftentimes good enough is good enough. Be good to yourself. Don't give yourself a hard time just because it's not as perfect as you think it could and should be. Just roll with it, but be good to yourself in doing it. Another big is to set realistic goals. If you've got a big goal that you'd like to achieve, make sure that you are breaking it down into smaller, more achievable chunks. Bill Gates is quoted as saying that we grossly overestimate how much we can achieve in a year, and we grossly tend to underestimate how much we can achieve in 3 years. So I know that's thinking a little bit further into the future, but the key thing is this: it's just get started, get a move on. Set realistic expectations and set realistic goals. Even if you have to downplay a little bit what you think you should be achieving, if you set realistic goals, you're more likely to succeed. And if you celebrate those successes, you're more likely to spur yourself on to get more done and be more successful. Another big phrase, and I heard this from one of my business coaches a number of years ago, that good enough is good enough. It's not an all or nothing situation. There will be times when things just ain't perfect. You've just got to roll with it. But good enough is good enough. Remember, done is better than perfect. If you're waiting for it to be done, if you're waiting for it to be perfect, nothing gets achieved, and it's never going to be good for you, your success, or those around you. Another useful step is to focus on the process and what's right in front of you. Focus on making small steps, progress along the way, celebrating that success and that progress while not being too panicked and fretting too much about the end result. Focus on the process, celebrate the small wins. And finally, if this is all too much, if you think that perfectionism is having a major detrimental effect on your life, I would urge you to seek help from a coach or a counselor, a therapist in some way, shape or form. If you feel that you can't tackle this and it's having massive impact, negative impact on your life, then get help. It's important, because ultimately if you can't function, nothing around you can function as well. So what are the benefits of tackling perfectionism? Well, arguably the biggest is better mental health and less stress. Perfectionism is a great way to destroy your self-esteem, destroy your self-worth, destroy your confidence, because you'll feel that nothing you do is ever going to be good enough. If you let go of this and that's gone, you will feel so much better, and you will achieve a heck of a lot more too, because you'll just get on with stuff. Your productivity will go up, your creativity will go up as well, and you'll be able to feel like you can genuinely start to achieve things. Another massive knock-on effect for tackling perfectionism is improved relationships. I wish I'd known 15 years ago what I know now about perfectionism and inflicting it upon others. It wasn't funny, it wasn't fun, and I'm now sadly paying a price. So, big deal. Relationships are a big deal, and yeah, if you're a perfectionist, I can promise you that in some way, shape or form, it's having a detrimental effect on your relationships. And ultimately, it's all about growth and learning. It's all about being a better person than you were yesterday, being a different person to the one you were a year ago, hopefully a better one. Growth and learning. Tackling this stuff is good for you. It will give you confidence to move forward. It will give you confidence to grow and move and learn going forward. So, what next? Well, I would urge you to reflect on this. If you're a perfectionist and you struggle, I would urge you to think about how it affects you. I would urge you to have a think about some of the ideas that I've given you on beginning to tackle it. I would urge you to get to grips with this, not just for your own sake, but for the sake of those around you. The more you begin to tackle this, the more you chip away at it, the more you get small wins, it will spur you on to do more and be better and do better in the future. And you know, this can only be a good thing. So no matter where you are, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you've got questions, please ask. I'm not a therapist or anything like that. I'm just a guy trying to make things better in my own life, and hopefully I can make things better in your life as well. So it'd be great to hear from you. Remember to subscribe to the channel. Thanks a lot. All the best.